Hi, astrology babes. Welcome to Water Trine Baby. I'm Brianna, and today I'm going to be giving you some of the most basic questions you should be asking yourself if you want to start the journey of analyzing your own natal birth chart. Grab your notebook, grab your pen, get a cup of coffee, get a cup of tea, and let's go. Okay, so the most important question you should ask yourself first is what is the shape of your birth chart? The birth chart is the blueprint of your life in the moment that you were born. So, understanding the shape can give you an idea of the whole picture before you look into the signs, before you look into the houses or the aspects or the planets and where they fall. I would look at that first. So, I'm going to provide a link down below with AstroSeek, which is a website where you can get a calculation of your natal birth chart. And that website makes it really easy for you to know the shape of your birth chart. When I first started in this journey, I learned that my natal birth chart is in the shape of a bucket. And what that means is that all of the planets are falling underneath the horizon line, or it can be above. I think Kim Kardashian also has a bucket shape. What it means is basically that on one side of the birth chart, all the planets are there, and then there's one planet, one lonely planet, either on the top of the bottom, that is pulling focus. So for me, it was amazing to discover this because I understood that the moon, that is the handle of the bucket, pulls a lot of focus for me. So now I know. And if you have a different shape, I think one is called locomotive. There's different shapes. AstroSeek will tell you the meaning behind it. And then you can get a sense. I think the locomotive is one where it looks like a pizza and there's a slice that's missing, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Please don't quote me on this. But if that is the case, there is a shape that is like that. Then you can understand that the planets are very much spread out through the whole circle, except one house, one area of the life that is empty. And it's really important to know what area is empty. It could give you a sense of what you're missing in your own life. So that's just an example. Learning the shape, super important. Second question, were you born during the day or were you born during the night? I'm going to show you how to see this in the birth chart. I'm going to include a little picture up here so you can start understanding the dynamics of what you're seeing when you look at the circle. It's not just a random circle. Basically, the center of the birth chart is the earth, and then everything around it, all the houses, are where the planets were when you were born. Essentially, that's what it is. So if you were born at night, that means your sun is going to be under the horizon. That is the case for me, right? I was born at 4:04 in the morning. So the sun is underneath the horizon. There's that line and there's the underneath the horizon. So it wasn't visible in the sky when I was born. So determine where the sun is and where the moon is when you look at your birth chart. This is really important to understand because if you were born with the moon above the horizon, that means that you as a person, you're going to take you're basically gonna show more of the qualities of your moon in your personality. So in my case, not only is the moon the handle of the bucket, this is where as you ask yourself all these questions, they all come together in a very comprehensive way. So not only is the moon in my natal birth chart the handle of the bucket, pulling a lot of the focus, I was also born at night. So the moon becomes very important for me. It's a very important planet. And even though, so if you were born at night, even though the moon is a planet that represents the subconscious, the feelings that nobody else really sees, the fact that your moon is above the horizon, it means that other people will be receptive to your emotions. They will see them. It will be visible to them. Frida Kahlo is a great example of this case. She painted her emotional state and she was recognized for it. Make a little asterisk next to the sun or the moon once you find out where both of these planets are in your natal birth chart. So the next question you should ask yourself is what is your sun sign and what is your north node? I personally really love this book, Karmic Astrology by Lisa Wagner. Um, she's been very comprehensive in explaining the North Node. So, your North Node will guide you on what you're supposed to learn and what is your purpose in learning. Like, what are the difficult lessons that you're supposed to learn in this lifetime? Whatever sign your North Node falls in, and whichever house it's in, you can get an idea what your purpose is. For me, it's a little bit easier because my sun sign and my north node are underneath the same house and the same sun sign. So it simplifies my purpose and where I'm supposed to shine in my lifetime. Now, very interesting. Now that we've learned if you were born at night, let's say, and the moon is a very important planet like it is for me, it's still important to know what your sun sign is. And later on, we're going to talk about aspects. Once you know where these two planets are, then we can look at what is the relationship between them. And it will give you a very good idea of who you are and how your personality comes out. So, determine what your sun sign is, what sign were you born under, determine where the north node is, what sign were you born under, determine when your moon sign is too, what sign, and look at the houses. Now, if you don't know what the houses are, the next question that you should be asking yourself is what is your rising sign? So, my rising sign is Virgo. When I found out the first time that I'm a Virgo rising, immediately I was like, that doesn't make any sense because I'm not a very organized person. I'm not someone that likes working with lists. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that whatever rising sign you have is also a part of your personality. Personally, I think the moon and the sun are the most important planets in understanding your personality. If you find that there's aspects of your personality that are similar to your rising, I'm pretty sure it's probably because there's some kind of placement that aligns with the sign that you have for your rising. But predominantly, why the rising is important is because it sets the signs in each house. There's an order, a progressive order of the signs. So the astrology, the natal birth chart is a wheel. I like to think of it as a karmatic wheel. What are the gifts that I was born with? What are the areas of my life that I'm supposed to pay attention to in this lifetime? So, when you're born underneath a rising sign, subsequently, there will be an order aligning with each house. So, Aries rising. If you're an Aries rising, then consider yourself lucky because the signs are going to fall into their respective houses, which means the first house is represented by Aries. So if your rising sign is Aries, that means Aries will fall in the first house, which means Taurus will fall in the second house, which the second house is Taurus's house, which means subsequently Gemini will fall in the third house. The third house belongs to Gemini. In my case, as a Virgo rising, all of the houses that are related to air are going to be replaced with water, meaning that in the areas of life that you're supposed to be communicative and a little bit more emotionally detached, I'm going to be way more sensitive and way more emotional and intense in my approach. Take note of what your rising sign is and pay attention to what are the signs that fall in each house because that is extremely important and is, I find, the most interesting part of looking at your natal birth chart. I'm gonna include a link to an astrologer here on YouTube that I think does an amazing job at giving you an idea of how your rising sign will predispose you in different areas of your life. Her channel is Ninth House Jupiter, and I'm gonna include a link. I was blown away when I watched her description of Virgo rising. Where are your planets? Now that you know your rising, now that you know the order of the signs that they're falling in, I like using Astro.com to take a look at my birth chart. So when you see screenshots of my birth chart above here, I'm using Astro.com. I'm also going to include that link in the description down below. There's something called stelliums, and it sounds weird when you're first learning about astrology, but it's very simple. This book that I showed earlier, Lisa Wagner, she considers stelliums to be more 4 or more planets within a house. So all the houses represent a different area of your life. I recommend that on your own time you learn about what each one is. They are attached to different signs. When you open up that circle, do you have a lot of planets within one house? Lisa Wagner considers 4 or more planets to be a stellium. I kind of agree with her because that means you're overcompensating in one area of your life. You're overcompensating with one sign. She describes it as overpacking in one area of your life. And her approach to astrology is from a karmatic viewpoint. She talks about it as, let's say, in a past life you were a Capricorn and you didn't fully learn the lessons of what it is to be a Capricorn. So in this lifetime, if you have 5 planets in Capricorn, you decided, oh, I need to pull as much energy in the sign, and now you're overcompensating. You're overpacked. You need to start decluttering little by little, breaking down what all these different planets within that one sign mean. Some people think 3 planets are enough for it to be stellium. If you don't have any houses with 4 or more planets and there's 3 planets within a house, that house is going to be important. That area of your life is going to be important. So for me, and even like 2 planets, I think that can show you like something important, or 1 planet. But start it's overwhelming to look at everything at once. Just start looking at the houses that have the most planets. So in my case, I have the most planets in the third and the second house. Another house that is kind of highlighted, there's 2 planets in it, is the fifth house. And because I'm an artist, I like looking at the fifth house. Look at your own birth chart. Take notes of the houses where you see a lot of planets. You don't have to know exactly the meanings, but write down what those planets are and what sign they're in and what house they're in. Moving on. So now that you know the houses that have a lot of planets in, now that you know where your moon, where your sun, where your north node is, the next step to really starting to understand the comprehensive image of your birth chart is looking at aspects. What are the relationship between these planets? Going back to the first and the second question, knowing that I was born at nighttime and the moon is a highlight and a focus in my birth chart, I want to look at what is the relationship between the moon and the sun in my natal birth chart. I'm a Libra sun sign. I know that my Cancer moon is pulling a lot of focus, and those 2 signs are forming a square, meaning these 2 signs, these 2 cardinal signs, want to take the wheel and they don't agree with each other's approach. When you have a square, especially between your sun and your moon, a square is a challenge. And if you find out, like I did, that your moon and your sun sign are forming a square, you might immediately go into a state of panic. But please don't. Because squares are incredible to have in your birth chart. You don't only want to have trines. I am not going to explain what the meanings are between trines, squares, and sextiles necessarily. You can find out what they are. Just pinpoint them in your chart by now and make a note. But in my case, just to give you an example of how to create, like, put some meaning in that, right? A square creates a motivation, it creates a drive, a tension that you want to overcome and you will never overcome. But it can lead to incredible realizations and breakthroughs just having it in your birth chart. So I, as a person, know now by determining these 2 things that the moon wants to be more important than my sun sign, but the sun sign is so important because it's how I'm supposed to shine in this lifetime. And this tension that these 2 planets are creating will reveal a lot of my inner conflict. I have an inner conflict of wanting to understand the emotional side of things and show myself in a public way emotionally versus wanting to understand the things and concepts in a very intellectual, detached, emotionally detached way. As an advice, as you're taking down these notes and, analyzing your own things, if there's contradictions in your chart like this, don't be scared of them. You're not supposed to be this holy person that's perfect all around. The contradictions will actually show you so much about yourself. Take note of them. Now you know. What are the houses with the most planets? These houses that have a lot of planets, what are the lines that are shooting up or sideways? If they're red, they're most likely an opposition or a square. If they're blue, they're more likely a sextile or a trine. And then look up what the meanings are. So let's say Mars and Venus are forming a square in your birth chart. These two planets are related to sex and love. Is there a conflict inside of you of what you desire sexually versus what you're attracting? That could be it. Find out what the meanings are for yourself and see what clicks. I want to point out something else that's really interesting too. My dad's a Cancer. He's a Cancer sun sign, and everybody says that I look like my dad. So the fact that I have my moon in Cancer above the horizon, the things that people can see, is really funny. Like I think there's a relationship, there's meaning there. I look like my dad. I pull the Cancer qualities in a very visible way. Okay, so the next thing you should probably think about is the elements in your birth chart. What element is dominating your birth chart? Because in my case, for example, I am an air sun sign, but I have a lot of water placements in my birth chart and barely any fire placements. I only have one planet under a fire sign, and that's Jupiter in Sagittarius. You can find this out if you go to astro.com. There's a little column that splits the elements. You can kind of count all the planets that fall along in that element. Find out what element is dominating your birth chart. You usually can tell from just looking at the circle and seeing where most of the planets are. If you have a lot of planets in the respective water houses based on your rising, then that means you have a lot of water. You have an intuitive approach to life. In my case, I don't have a lot of fire placements, so I like to look at the empty houses that are ruled by fire in my birth chart and look at the ruler of the sign um to get an understanding of how I need to balance that out. But yeah, I hope this helps. Take your time making the notes and take your time doing research. There's no rush in understanding astrology. It's taken me a whole year to really understand what these concepts even mean. Understanding your natal birth chart is really difficult to do. I recommend getting a reading from a professional astrologer because it's really easy to fall in the doom and gloom when you find that a certain placement might be difficult and you could, easily misinterpret something. So I recommend getting an astrology reading from a professional astrologer. I did it this year and I feel so good after the reading. It really confirmed my own interpretations and expanded on the knowledge that I already have. So start by yourself. Eventually, if you can afford it, get a real reading. There's a lot of talented people out there, so do it. I wish you luck in this journey. May the universe bless you. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this helps.